It's going to be a great wall. It's going to be a real wall. It's not going to be one of these little babies. We're going to build the wall. And yesterday, the top person, President of Mexico, said, we will never, ever pay for that wall. I said, the wall just got 10 feet higher. It's going to be a real wall, not a toy wall like we have right now. That's 10 feet tall, and it's a fence.
Well, the border wall, of course, was President Trump's signature campaign promise, and he has certainly talked it up all through his 2.5 years in office. Tonight, though, the New York Times is matching the Washington Post's reporting on Trump's determination to finish the wall by Election Day. And the Times reports that Trump, quote, has repeatedly suggested during meetings on immigration policy that aides take the land and get it done. Both papers report the president spoke of seizing property and then suggested offering pardons to aides who break the law, something that has been suggested before. The Times went on to report, quote, a senior administration official did not deny that Mr. Trump had made the comments, but said that the president had been joking. He winks when he does it, that person said, and added that Mr. Trump had never seriously suggested the idea of pardons. The Times also reports, quote, what White House officials have walked back as lighthearted suggestions in the past have proved true. In April, Mr. Trump asked Kevin McAleenan, the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, to close the southwestern border to migrants, suggesting he could issue a pardon if he encountered any legal trouble. At the time, White House officials said the president might have been joking. In public, at least, the president has certainly sounded serious when discussing the issue of pardons.
I never want anybody to be above the law. But the pardons are a very positive thing for a president. The question was asked yesterday about pardons with respect to Paul Manafort. I said, I'm not taking anything off the table. We're looking at a lot of different pardons for a lot of different people. Some of these soldiers are people that have fought hard, long, and then when they fight, sometimes they get really treated very unfairly. The power to pardon is a beautiful thing. You got to get it right. You got to get the right people.
Today, Trump slammed the Washington Post's reporting. He wrote, quote, another totally fake story in the Amazon Washington Post lobbyist, which states that if my aides broke the law to build the wall, which is going up rapidly, I would give them a pardon. This was made up by the Washington Post only in order to demean and disparage fake news. Another post included video of a barrier along with the message, the wall is going up very fast despite total obstruction by Democrats in Congress and elsewhere. Both the Times and the Post also report about 60 miles of replacement barrier has been completed under the administration's watch, all in areas that already had existing border infrastructure. The Wall Street Journal notes that, quote, about 654 miles of the 1,991-mile border already had some kind of fabricated barrier when Mr. Trump took office. Much of the rest has natural barriers. Approximately 1,295 miles of the border are river and 696 miles are land. Still with us, Nancy Cook, John Meacham, Eugene Robinson, and General Barry McCaffrey. Nancy, let me start with you. This reporting of the president behind the scenes saying essentially do whatever you have to do to get this thing done, and there could be pardons. What's the White House saying? They're saying this is a joke. What's the context that they're saying this was delivered in?
Well, I think that what they're saying is what's so interesting to me as a reporter who covers the White House on a daily basis is that they're not saying that the reporting is incorrect, as the president is saying. They're just saying that the reporters got the context a little wrong. But that's an excuse that they often use. They'll say that the president is joking or, don't take him so literally. But they're actually not behind the scenes calling into question that he actually said those words. And in my experience, typically when the president goes after on Twitter a news outlet like this and is particularly incensed about an article, it later turns out to be 100% correct. And again, his own officials are not calling out the veracity of that reporting. I think that the power to pardon is something that the president didn't know a ton about when he came into the White House, but he's been very enamored of that potential power once he fully grasped it. And we saw in several instances in the Mueller report in which he, a bunch of aides stopped him from obstructing justice I think that the president doesn't always understand the boundaries of governing and government, and we've seen that time and time again with instances in the Mueller report, with this idea that you can just seize land from people and sort of ask for forgiveness later and do pardons. I think that that is part of the president's governing strategy.
Gene, what do you make of it? The idea that, apparently coming from the White House here, the idea that, yes, maybe he said the words, but the words weren't meant, the interpretation of the words coming through these news stories might be off a little bit.
Well, that's sort of the go-to move of what you would call the communication shop of the White House, which is not a functioning communication shop because he is his own communications director. But when, he gets caught out saying these things, in this case, directing officials to break the law, which a president, I think we can agree, should not do. And so, he was just joking. You can't take him literally. Well, there are other times when, you have to take him literally, or you should take him literally, according to them. And that decision is made post facto. So it's depending on how crazy it is, or potentially illegal, or illogical, or just loopy, the statement was, they can either say, well, yes, absolutely, that's right, or no, he was just joking. It's ridiculous. I just keep getting back to the substance of what he said. I trust the reporting, and that's just outrageous. That break the law and I'll give you a pardon.
In terms of the reaction here coming in, Washington Post has this story up tonight about the response from congressional Democrats. They say the notion has alarmed congressional Democrats who had been investigating potential obstruction of justice on Trump's part as the House continues to weigh whether to launch impeachment proceedings when lawmakers return to Washington next month. Several of the 15 pardons that Trump has issued during his presidency, a power that is nearly unchecked and that Trump has relished, have carried with them an overtly political tone. John Meacham, that is sort of part of the political backdrop for this news about Trump and what he's saying apparently behind the scenes about pardons. In terms of the potential, I should say, Democratic push to move towards an impeachment inquiry, do you think this adds much steam?
I think that this is still in Speaker Pelosi's court on that decision. My own sense is, as was just pointed out, I think the president found out about the pardon power when he became president, kind of like the one thing that President Kennedy really enjoyed when he was having his transition meeting with Eisenhower in late 60, early 61, is Ike showed him the button you pushed where the helicopter came to get you. And that was the thing that Kennedy loved, the helicopter coming. I think the pardon power is like that button for Trump. It's a nifty thing he didn't know he had. It appeals to the authoritarian instincts. It appeals to the unilateral instincts. And the other thing on the obstruction question is we saw this in the Mueller report, where he would say things, and if people had gone out and done them, that we would be in an entirely different place in terms of impeachment, right? So you're really counting on the people around the president knowing when to take him seriously and when not. And that's an awfully significant burden to put on people when they're dealing with the most powerful person in the world.
Yeah, General, I'm curious about that. The people around the president in the administration, perhaps, who heard this comment, how do you think it was received by them? I mean, on the one hand, he's saying these words. You could look at, we played the clip there of the president talking about Paul Manafort. He hasn't, at least as of yet, pardoned Paul Manafort. Do you think this is the kind of thing that would actually encourage somebody to take a step over the line on a comment that, hey, maybe you get a pardon down the line?
Well, there's a huge sense of loyalty and obedience to the President of the United States throughout, particularly with his own political appointees. Many of which, whom I'm sorry to say, are squirrely characters in the White House. I do think if Trump tells the departments of his government to carry out illegal acts as a general statement, they're not going to do it. I've run into minor experiences like this in public life. We normally send a letter back saying, here's the objections, the problems to what you're telling me to do. If you want me to do it, put it in writing. And that normally suffices to back people up. But nothing on this order where he's apparently saying I'm going to order funds to be spent, actions to be taken, land to be seized, by the way, which is going to go over very badly in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. I've worked that border issue for years. They're not going to like this. So I think he's headed down into a very dangerous spot in which he may see a rebellion in his own government, and should see it if he tells them to break the law.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.